Glad to still be here. She should be a week into her new job. She should still be here. And the fact that she's not, we're going to continue to have this because her voice needs to continue to be heard. And if you heard it on the tape for yourself, and if she had gotten out of jail, she herself would have pursued suing that officer or taking care of the officer. You can hear it on the tape.
A police officer stops a motorist for a minor traffic issue, in this case allegedly making a turn without the proper signal, which should be a warning or a ticket issued, and a small fine to pay turns into an argument, a demand, a physical confrontation, and then a suicide. In the blink of a few days, American law enforcement is once again faced with a critical eye on itself, and how they not only deal with the general public, but how they deal with those incarcerated in local jails. We got a lot of work to do, so let's dig in. Pleasure to welcome back retired Los Angeles Police Department Sergeant and author of Black and Blue, The Creation of a Manifesto, Cheryl Dorsey, joined by former New York City Police Department officer, now a radio talker in the West Palm Beach, Florida market at WJNO AM, John Cardillo. I want to thank you both for joining us. And again, as I noted, we have a lot of little things to do here. Sergeant Dorsey, to you first in the Sandra Bland case. Let's break this down. The officer at question here, technically speaking, and I've already researched and asked a number of people, they say that except for the fact that he did not know when to bring this situation down, and he exacerbated this, technically he was doing things legally. Would you agree?
Well, I mean, technically he was doing things legally, but at that moment when he presented her with that citation to sign, it was over, and he should have just allowed her to sign it. We can't compel a citizen to like it when we give them a traffic citation, and so for him to engage her in a dialogue about her state of being and whether or not she was happy or agitated was nonsensical, and that is what led to where we are today.
John, let's then take it the next step here. As I just mentioned to Sergeant Dorsey, the screaming at her, back and forth, put out the cigarette, get out of the car, whatever. He is allowed to do that by law. But is it not fair to say that this was an officer, for whatever reason, was emotionally involved, got agitated, and drove this thing to the next level, correct?
I don't necessarily agree.
Really?
I think police officers, I think they rely on their training and experience. And what the media is not reporting is Miss Bland had 10 altercations, incidents, run-ins with the police since 2004. She owed thousands of dollars in fines and looks like had an outstanding warrant. Many DWIs, many traffic violations. This officer clearly saw something that made him uncomfortable to not conduct a summary investigation.
Okay, John, I'm going to interrupt you on this because what you're saying is all well and good, but don't you think that the officer involved could have gotten things done without the screaming at her and ratcheting this thing up, the emotional level getting up? Shouldn't he have been in greater control?
Well, you're taught in the academy and then in your field training to control the situation and to escalate force to the next level. So when a motorist that you're uncomfortable letting go along says, no, I'm not going to comply, the police really don't have the luxury of saying okay and walking away.
All right, now, Sergeant Dorsey, to you. There's the point. The individual inside the automobile starts to get belligerent, things start to get ratcheted up, and I'm going to put the same thing to you. The officer's side of things. Is it just natural when you're there? You don't know what that person is doing in the car, and I'm not trying to say that what happened here is good, but what I'm saying is you don't know what's coming out of that car. How do you then control yourself and bring this down?
Well, you have to use a little common sense, and this officer didn't do that, and so we're taught to escalate, and we're also taught to de-escalate it. We didn't see any de-escalation here. We only saw the officer becoming more verbally boisterous, if you will, and I think what he was afraid of is a black female behind the wheel of a car. Whether or not she has numerous arrests has nothing to do with this incident right here. And so let's not try to smear her and deflect this to something that it isn't. Let's deal with why didn't this officer just allow her to sign that ticket? She didn't have to like it. We understand that people are not going to be pleased with the service that we give them. That comes with the territory. You sign the ticket and send her on her way.
Okay, Sergeant Dorsey, I've got a minute left here in this segment. I'm going to agree with you. Personally, I think he should have brought this down. He could have taken control of the situation. John, though, I heard it as soon as Sergeant Dorsey said it, when she talked about a female black driver there, you got a little upset. Tell us why.
Because the race card is expired, Ed. We're all exhausted. We don't want to hear it anymore. This had nothing to do with race. This was a woman, non-compliant, 10 run-ins with police in 10 years, owes thousands of dollars in fines, has a history of disobeying law and disobeying court orders, That officer on scene where we all weren't saw something that made him uncomfortable and acted appropriately. Race has nothing to do with it, and it's a ludicrous assertion.
All right, now, just very quickly, would you, though, agree with me that there are police officers around the country who stop people simply because they're black?
Sure, and there are people of every race, every creed, and in every profession who do wrong for the wrong reasons. It's not unique to police.
Okay, I'm going to ask you both to stand by because there's one other side of this that we haven't touched on yet, and that's what happened in the jail. I want to make sure we get to that when we come back. Cheryl Dorsey, John Cardillo, stand by. What happened in that jail is also a big part of this story, but we also want to... 60 Minutes of News continues. We turn to more from the law enforcement blotter and what could be a real warning about our immediate future, plus inside the jail. Welcome back. Retired LAPD Sergeant, author of Black and Blue, The Creation of a Manifesto, Cheryl Dorsey, joined by former New York Police Department officer, now a radio talker in the West Palm Beach, Florida market, WJNO, John Cardillo. John, I'm going to come to you first on this. The one thing that we do have to talk about is what happened in the jail, because there's a report today that comes out that says the woman in question here, Sandra Bland, told the officers that she had attempted suicide at another time earlier. Don't you think then that they've got to watch her? They got to take everything away from her. They didn't do the job here. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Yes, on that one I would. In the NYPD, and I'm sure Sergeant Dorsey had the same experience in the LAPD. When somebody has been suicidal in the past, especially when they notify you, they should be on suicide watch. There's really no reason I can think of that she was left alone for 2 hours. We know there's that 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. timeline. So on that one, I think an investigation really is warranted.
Sergeant Dorsey, rather, when we come down and we look at what happened then in the jail, is this just they don't care? Is it just that they're such a small department that they don't know any better? Come on. These are cops. Somebody tells them that they're going to potentially, or that they tried suicide once before. You got to be on your guard about this. This is poor training and poor leadership, is it not?
Absolutely. When you take someone into custody, you're responsible for their care, and you need to make sure that you monitor them appropriately. And so I'm sure that asking her whether or not she had attempted suicide in the past was probably protocol. And we understand that there's a history of suicide in that jail. This is not the first time that this occurred. So they should certainly err on the side of caution. And how is it that she's allowed to have a plastic trash bag in the jail? It makes no sense to me. And to be honest with you, Ed, I'm not convinced that Sandra Bland committed suicide. I think what happened in that jail was much like what we saw on the street. I think Sandra was punished because she didn't keep quiet.
It is absolutely a possibility. I know that John Cardillo is immediately going to take umbrage with that, but let's be honest, we have to wait for the investigation to come down. We don't know. Here's something we do know. I want you both to listen to this. This is the mother of a young man, Sam DuBose, in Cincinnati on the 4th of July. This man was a motorist. He was attacked, and he was beaten, shot. It was a horrible incident. Let's hear the mother here, and then we'll start.
This street corner in Mount Auburn becoming something more.
No guns shown, no drugs shown. He need to get charged with murder.
Dozens gathering, demanding answers from UC police.
No matter what, nobody should die because of a license plate.
Officer Ray Tensing opening fire on 43-year-old Sam DuBose during a traffic stop investigators say turned to a struggle.
As far as the east is from the west.
DuBose's mother Audrey leading this group in prayer.
My son had no business getting killed. Nobody had no right to put a gun to his head and shoot him. What did he do to deserve that?
Okay, now I've only got 2 minutes left. I want to point out that's the Sam DuBose shooting that happened just recently. In the 4th of July incident in Cincinnati, you had an individual there who was beaten, bloodied, and it was out on social media. People were laughing. Sergeant, aren't we looking at in Cincinnati here? We're on a powder keg here. We've got to be careful. We're looking at the video right now of what happened on July the 4th. People were laughing at this. We're talking about a racial incident. What do we do to make sure it doesn't turn into the next Ferguson?
Well, we need to make sure that we maintain our sensitivity, and we should treat everyone the way that you would want to be treated, right? And so laughing at anyone who's being the victim of abuse, whether it's physical, emotional, or psychological, is really unacceptable on either part.
All right, John, same thing here. We've had these two racially charged incidents here. The powder keg is sitting here. From your experience then as a police officer, if you're running things right now, what do you do? Because, hey, let's face it, cops and citizens have got to be on edge right now in Cincinnati.
Sure, and you want to do everything you can to diffuse tensions, but 30 seconds on DuBose. The guy had between 60 and 75 arrests. We can't get the accurate number. 13 children and a historical life of crime. He handed the police officer a bottle of booze and started wrestling with him. This is not a great example of an unarmed victim. This is a career violent criminal.
Sergeant Dorsey, would you agree with that, though? Because what he's saying is correct. There was a problem.
Listen, none of that is a capital offense violation, and so you don't get to kill people because they're uncooperative. You don't get to kill people
when they try to take your gun away and they try to kill you, Sergeant. So let's be honest about police.
That's what police officers are to de-escalate and escalate the use of force. And so if you don't have common sense, then you're in the wrong profession.
Okay, hang on 1 second. 1 second. Sergeant, we heard you come in. Okay, John, 15 seconds. I got to let you answer because the two of you cancel each other out. 15 seconds, John.
Yeah, he was a guy with 75 arrests. He was not a guy who responded compliantly to police. This is a ridiculous case.
And Sergeant Dorsey, you would say that's another story. That's aside the point.
It has nothing to do with what's happening right now. Let's deal with what's going on right now. And if there's not sufficient force, then you can't overcome it with excessive force. And so what that person did yesterday, a year ago, a month ago is of no import. Let's deal with the facts right now today.
And we are going to talk about this again. We are all out of time. Cheryl Dorsey, John Cardillo, marvelous. Thank you so much for joining us.